you have sort of promoted and endorsed the BDS call in the US, and you've been one of the sort of proponent defender of this call in the US. So how has this gone so far, and is the movement sort of growing over there in the US?
Definitely the movement is gaining strength, and we're going to see it gain even more strength inside Israel after the July 14th movement reveals its true colors, because among the radical left in Israel, I just want to talk about the radical left, or the non-Zionist left in Israel, for a second. They have always been extremely isolated from Israeli society. They feel a lot of suffering. They experience a lot of suffering for their activism, physical suffering. You know, they're shot at, they're tear gassed, they're imprisoned for refusing army service. But the greatest suffering they experience is psychological suffering, because in one of the most tribalistic societies on earth, they're denied a place, they're denied employment, sometimes they're denied housing. Many of my friends have been drummed out of jobs because the Shabak came, the Shin Bet came and said, do you know who he is? And so what they've done is they've created a tribe within the tribe to provide them with the emotional succor and psychological support that they couldn't find within the Zionist mainstream. And with the July 14th protests, there was a huge demonstration, I think on July 26th in Tel Aviv, and there were 41 arrests. Almost all of them were members of the left who are veterans in the struggle, who know how to block an intersection, who know how to get attention. The rest of the protesters, many of them have never been in a demonstration. Normally at an anti-occupation protest, these arrests are never reported inside Israel. This time they were prime time. They were on the news, they were on the cover of newspapers. I was there. I couldn't get my camera. Usually I'm right there with my camera, but the Israeli mainstream media was surrounding these anarchists even, who were being arrested by the police. And they emerged from their prison cells as not only heroes, but as like the avant-garde of the movement. And they started to feel like they were part of the family again. You know, for a Jewish Israeli who's been exiled internally within Israel society, this was an incredibly, I think, a moment of great psychological relief. And a lot of them have told me, you know, my standing is increased. And so they believe increasingly in this movement. Once this movement is revealed as an attempt to resuscitate the old Zionist left and simply return to the good old days of Zionism, when everyone was guaranteed respect who was within the Yishuv, meaning only Jews, I think they'll start to come to their senses again and return to the tactic of looking to the outside, to BDS, because in my opinion, based on all the analysis I've done and my experience in Israeli society, that society has no internal capacity for creating the kind of change that we want to see, which is that Israel will simply become a normal country that follows international conventions and normal human values. So I have endorsed BDS for that reason, and because if you look at the peace process, what's referred to as the peace process, there hasn't been we've seen the removal of absolutely zero established settlement units under the peace process. Meanwhile, BDS has forced the Blood Diamond kingpin Lev Levayev to stop building settlements in the West Bank. We see results everywhere. Even German companies, you know, racked with, you know, German historical guilt, have pulled out of the West Bank because of pressure from inside German society. And so this is something that everyone can do, that's nonviolent, that's incredibly hopeful, and is just based on international law and human rights. And I see it spreading in the U.S., even in the Zionist community, in the Zionist left. Meretz USA, which may never endorse BDS, has at least endorsed a settlement boycott. I think Americans for Peace Now has done that as well. And J Street, this supposed pro-peace, pro-Israel organization, as if the two can be mutually inclusive, has refused to do it, and they've been marginalized. And instead, Jewish Voice for Peace, a non-Zionist organization, has a mailing list now of 100,000 people, and it has thousands and thousands of dues-paying members, and they're kind of filling the void that J Street's created. because of one thing, which is the BDS issue. People want to do something. They want to participate in Palestinian nonviolence, and it's simply working. Now, with Meretz USA and Americans for Peace Now endorsing a settlement boycott, we can now say who's funding the settlements, who's providing the mortgages for the settlements, who's constructing the settlements, who's providing security for the settlements. It's all coming from within what's known as Israel proper. And we can now make that case that a full boycott is really the only thing that can actually succeed in guaranteeing justice and moving the situation into the realm where we want it to go, which is towards reconciliation.